guys, welcome back to BREN'S Beauty Boutique. I'm Bren. So thank you for joining me for another Wellness Wednesday. We're doing something a little bit different today. As you can probably tell, I'm sitting out on my patio. It's a beautiful day today, and I was going to do the coffee video for you guys today, but unfortunately I don't have everything I need. I do order some of my coffee supplies on Amazon, and they didn't get here in time. No big deal. Thought we'd do something a little bit different. I've been talking to you guys about the lifestyle change that I've been making, but I really haven't delved into why and what prompted this and what prompted the urgency, actually, because it was a pretty urgent decision for me. So I'm going to take you guys back a couple of years and just talk about something, a fairly recent diagnosis that I've had, and that was of something called EoE, and that is Eosinophilic Esophagitis. It's a mouthful. And it was something I'd never heard of before being diagnosed. And it's essentially where your eosinophils, which are a type of white blood cell, they attack your esophageal cells, and they cause damage in there. And mine was very bad. It was quite severe by the time I was diagnosed. I want to say 2 years ago, maybe-ish. Of course, kind of like the same thing with the brain tumor. I think it's this way for a lot of us. Once you get a diagnosis, in hindsight, then you can connect the dots and say, oh gosh, this explains so much. Well, it was kind of the same thing with the EoE. It explained a lot leading up to that point. Probably about 3 or maybe 4 years before my diagnosis, I had begun to suffer some just really debilitating issues. I was having terrible joint pain. I was extremely fatigued. Then my skin started breaking down. I was so itchy a lot of the times. My arms, my legs, my back, I couldn't even sleep. I started getting sores on mostly my arms, my torso, but then they started on my legs, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have some sort of a parasite or something. I don't, this is weird. And so I had seen a dermatologist, and then I went and got a second opinion because the first one ruled out anything parasitic, but yet he didn't really give me any answers. And then I saw another dermatologist, and it was the same thing. He said, well, you don't have any parasites. And I said, well, then what do I have? And finally he just said, well, it's contact dermatitis. I said, okay. Seemed like a reasonable explanation, I guess. So I changed everything. I stopped using anything with perfumes, or I basically stopped using anything on my skin at all. I wasn't using anything. Every once in a while I'd use coconut oil as a moisturizer if I was really dry, but I basically stopped using anything on my skin. I was also bruising really easily, and I'd have bruises and I wouldn't even know how I got them. And then a strange thing happened about 3 years ago or so at Christmas. I had a glass of red wine, and after just a couple of sips, I became extremely flushed and got super hot, and I felt sick. It was awful, the most awful feeling, and it was like an allergic reaction, and it scared me. And so I talked to my doctor about that, and I guess there's a thing, I can't remember, of course, the name of it. It was essentially an allergic reaction, but it really scared me. So needless to say, I think I've maybe had wine once since then because I'm too scared, and I had a reaction, and so I just don't drink it anymore. I've even tried nitrate-free wine, and it still bothers me, so I steer clear. With all that said, all of these things, these issues that were happening, this was a slow progression again of symptoms, and with all these issues that were happening, it really affected my mental state too, because number one, I wasn't getting much sleep, and number two, I was depressed. And the depression I felt at that time is what I call circumstantial depression, and I call it that because I felt great otherwise. I felt good in my mind, but I just couldn't get my body to function right. I couldn't get my body to do what I wanted to do, and that was depressing. It made me sad. I've had family and friends go through that really deep, severe depression. It wasn't that kind of depression for me. It was just circumstantial. It was because I was feeling awful. I was so tired I couldn't do anything. My body was hurting, all of the things, and then the lack of sleep. Well, so then I ended up seeing my family doctor. I'd seen her a couple of times and talked to her about things that were going on. She did a blood panel. Well, the blood workup showed that I was severely deficient in iron and potassium. I was deficient in D. So she put me on iron pills and some other supplements. I started supplementing different things to help remedy those deficiencies. Well, unfortunately, what I was taking was really having little to no impact on my blood work at all over the course of the next few months. And I had asked my doctor, well, why is that? Why am I so deficient, and why aren't these pills working, and why isn't this working? And I don't even remember what her reply was, but she just kept basically upping the dosage. She wasn't, in hindsight, you know, I felt like she wasn't really looking into the problem. Like, obviously there's a problem. Why is my body not absorbing nutrients? So I took it upon myself, as per usual, that's what I do now, and I just started researching everything I could about, you know, long-standing nutritional deficiencies, which, might I add, were the reason that my skin was so itchy and that I was having sores. Once I figured things out and was able to begin correcting these deficiencies and these issues, my skin started to heal, though it has taken years. It has taken years. I mean, I still have scarring from all the sores that I had during that time, you know, from a vitamin C, zinc, A deficiencies, D deficiencies. All of those things work together, and I was low in everything for a very long time, they suspect, which can really do harm to your body, by the way. So through all of my research, I continued to supplement. Well, fast forward a few months, all of a sudden it was like I couldn't swallow anymore. It actually started with my iron pill, and it was just this tiny little red pill that she had me taking, and it felt like it got stuck, and I thought, oh gosh, it must be the pill. It's the coating, or, you know, you blame everything else. You find reasons, you justify. And well, then I think the following day I tried taking maybe my multivitamin or my vitamin D, which is just a really small gel cap. Everything felt like it was just getting stuck, and then it felt like it was accumulating, and I felt like stuff was, the word, like, disintegrating. You know, the pills were breaking down in my throat, and I, you know, of course, then I'm thinking, well, I don't want to cause any more problems, so I just let it go. I didn't ingest anything for a couple of days, and I finally, though my throat felt irritated, I finally felt like, okay, things have gone down. And then let's just fast forward. I basically ended up not being able to swallow any pills of any kind. So my doctor changed my iron over to a liquid form. I purchased what I could afford at the time of supplementation that was in liquid form, like the vitamin D and different things like that. But it was actually kind of difficult to get those because I didn't want all the sugar and all of the other things that were in it, and that was hard to find. I ended up stumbling across a bariatric multivitamin, which I hadn't had any bariatric surgery, obviously, but I stumbled upon this, and they said, you know, they give these chewables and dissolvables to patients who've had these procedures done because they can't fill their guts with all these pills naturally, because their bellies are much smaller, and so on and so forth. And so I had ordered some of these, I think they were called berry meds, or I don't remember, but I'd ordered a multivitamin D. I ordered different supplements of that as well, even though it had this, like, a fake sugar in it and stuff. At least I was able to take something, and a couple of them were chewables. Some you just stuck under your tongue and let it dissolve, and at least I was able to take some kind of nutrition, get some sort of a nutrition in me, even if my body wasn't necessarily taking it in. But what I realized is, you know, through the mucous membranes and having something that would dissolve, or something that I could chew, if it didn't have to go through this mode of transportation and through my gut, because my gut, of course, was so messed up, I was actually getting some of that nutrition this way by doing it that way. And because I remembered when my dad was dying of cancer, and he was on morphine and everything, and we had to, you know, put it in by his gums, and anybody who's been there, you know what I'm talking about, and that had, you know, that had stuck with me. And I thought, well, if it's absorbable that way for him, then these should be absorbable this way for me. And so that was one way to get my nutrition in. So thanks, Dad, for that tip. I had to learn it that way, but nonetheless I learned it, and so I had that in my back pocket. And so these supplements, at least, I was able to take. Then I started having issues swallowing food, and tried everything, you know, mashed potatoes to cauliflower to just a vegetable or fruit. I mean, anything was just getting stuck, or it felt like it was getting stuck at some point, like from here down, it was just getting stuck somewhere. And it was just so uncomfortable, and I was losing weight, but not in a good way. I was very deficient. I was just really, really malnourished. I was overweight and malnourished, and I felt awful. I was weak. So what I had to do was I had to basically stop eating around noon, 11 o'clock in the morning to noon, and I'd have one meal, and I'd just eat slowly, and I'd eat what I could, and then I'd have to stop eating completely, because otherwise I would basically regurgitate my food the rest of the day, especially during the night. And even still, even stopping eating at noon or so, I would still sometimes regurgitate, wake up choking, because I would regurgitate that food. It just never would go down. And So I ended up calling my doctor again, and she had a couple tests on me. I had, I think, 2 different endoscopies. I had a colonoscopy. I think she even had done a chest x-ray, and there was nothing. They said there's nothing wrong. And I said, well, clearly there is, because I can't swallow, and that's not normal. That's not normal, you know? So again, I took it upon myself. I started researching. I started just Googling everything, the symptoms, and I came upon, you know, obviously gut health is what kept coming up with swallowing issues. It was all linked to gut health, and I knew that my gut had been screwed up anyway, because I had been eating so poorly, and you know, my nutrition was off, and I knew there was something going on there. But why the swallowing? How was it all connected? I ended up finding a doctor at Northwestern, supposedly one of the best with swallowing and digestive issues, and so you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and so I was a squeaky wheel, and I kept calling almost every day to his office down in Chicago, you know, begging for an appointment. And finally they gave in. You know, the gal finally, she said, have you lost any weight? I said, I've lost 47 pounds in a month, and not a good way. I felt awful. I was so weak, I could hardly do anything. Just, you know, getting myself out of bed to go use the restroom was a challenge. It was difficult. So she scheduled an appointment. I had to wait 6 weeks to get in. He's a very popular, well-known, and well-respected doctor, so I was okay with that. Fast forward 6 weeks, had the appointment at Northwestern in Chicago. They knew I was traveling, so they had basically scheduled everything for that day. I had a lot of stuff done that day. I had an endoscopy done. I had I think it's called MANOMETRY, I remember that right, and a couple of other different things. I'll try to insert a video of that if I can find it here for you guys. It was not a fun test, but you know, I didn't care. I wanted answers, and so I was just like, just suck it up. Deal with it, you know. And so now we're back at diagnosis. I did show some sluggish digestion, but the diagnosis was eosinophilic esophagitis. And you know, I was just happy to have a diagnosis, to know what was going on. And I had become so sensitive to so many different foods, and even to smoke, whether it was, you know, if the house got smoky from burning some food, or sitting out by a bonfire, or if my husband was grilling out and we didn't close the, you know, the patio door and the smoke was coming in, or cigarette smoke, it just about, I mean, I would cough and cough and cough, and that's part of this whole process that's happening, this condition. My doctor explained it to us that, you know, I basically have a multiple chemical sensitivity thing going on along with this EoE. It's kind of like your body, in layman's terms, it's kind of like your body is just attacking itself. It's constantly on high alert. Your immune system's constantly on high alert, and it's just like attacking everything and gets confused, I guess. So according to this doctor, my options, the first course of action was to, I had been on PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, like omeprazole, for years, and he wanted to increase the dose on that and give that a trial run and see, because he said, let's rule out, you know, acid reflux or whatever. I don't quite remember all the verbiage, but so he put me on an increased dose of omeprazole for, I think it was 4 weeks, somewhere in there. Went back to see him, nothing had changed. They did another endoscopy with biopsies. My eosinophils had actually increased, and he said I was not suffering from acid reflux. He said I wasn't suffering from that. It was the eosinophils, and he had to, you know, determine that through that trial and error process, I guess. And so at that point, according to him, my options were to start on steroids as well as a medication. I read something, I can't remember the name of it, for sluggish digestion. I wasn't really, you know, that just wasn't for me. And, you know, I said, is there anything else I can do? And he said, well, you can do, you know, do the elimination diet too, along with that, you know, but I really think you're going to need, because I had a pretty severe case. He said, I think that you're going to need, you know, steroids and supplemental help. And I said, well, I'd like to try a few things out, and he was agreeable. He was fine with that. I came home and I started to just research. Again, went back, everything pointed back to gut issues, and so I thought, well, maybe if I can just straighten out my gut myself. I knew it was going to be hard work, and I knew I was going to have to research, because I really didn't know a lot about any of this stuff at that point. I'm a research junkie. I've been researching health and nutrition for like 10 years, even though I haven't implemented it into my own life until recently. So I did know quite a bit, but not enough to, you know, say, hey, this is what's going on, or this is what you need to do. So I really delved in at that point. There was so much information out there, and I really had to scrutinize what I was going to take in, and, you know, what I was going to let go in one ear and out the other. But from my understanding, some people believe that PPIs or like omeprazole and things like that, especially long term, can cause the body to become unable to absorb nutrients. Well, that explained a lot to me, because I'd been on PPIs most of my adult life. I mean, probably since I was 19 years old. So the first thing I decided to do for myself was to wean myself off of that medication on my own. And I do not recommend this, you guys. Like I said at the beginning, I'm no doctor, I'm nobody. This is what has worked for me. This is what I've done. And I'm just sharing it with you guys. If you guys want to make any changes, please see your doctor. I weaned myself off of the omeprazole very slowly. And how I did that was first I started out taking Tums instead, because I thought, well, that's probably better. Still don't know if that's better, probably not. But I started taking Tums on the days that I wasn't taking my omeprazole. After I researched a little further, I came across 2 other medications that I had begun taking. And there's a process to this, so don't just, you know, you can't just, I want to caution you guys, don't just run out and buy supplements because someone else is taking them and be like, oh, okay, I'll take these. Please do your research, because it took time for me to do this, to go from, you know, omeprazole to these medications, and then eventually, luckily for me, wean myself off of everything. The first thing that I had come across was this, was a supplement called Premier HCl Dietary Supplement. It's a betaine hydrochloride Premier Digestive Support with no added steroids. This is basically an excipient-free supplement, and I try to avoid excipients, you know, fillers in my supplements the most that I can. So I had picked this up from Premier Research Labs, and I had begun taking this, and that seemed to help a little bit, though I still wasn't out of the woods. Even though I was at this point, I was off of the omeprazole. I had, you know, graduated onto this, but I was still having some pretty intense heartburn where I'd have to, you know, really chew like 4 Tums, and sometimes, you know, I'd fall asleep with them in my mouth because I was just the heartburn was so bad. Anybody who gets heartburn knows, you know what I'm talking about. And then when the heartburn would get worse, the regurgitation would get worse, and, you know, I still had all of the same issues that I was having prior to diagnosis. But they were just easing up a little bit as I learned what my body really didn't like. Oh, by the way, EoE is basically an allergic response. Your body's having a constant allergic response. It would be like somebody having an anaphylactic attack, only it's like things get stuck. Okay, I'm sorry, I have to backtrack here because I forgot to tell you guys. It felt like things were sticking in my throat, and at times they were, but the reason that was happening was because the eosinophils, the white blood cells, were building up, and they were just like creating a closed pathway for things to get through. And that's what I would feel when I was swallowing, and that's what I was feeling, was this kind of closure because of these white blood cells just building up, and you know. Then I decided, you know, this just wasn't enough. I added another supplement, and I can't remember what it was. I'll try to think of it, you guys. But then I started researching even more, and I had looked at some of Dr. Berg's videos. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but I think he's a chiropractor. But nonetheless, we won't get into that. But I came upon him because I was researching about not having a gallbladder and how difficult it can make digestion when you don't have a gallbladder. And so I'd come across a couple of formulas. This one by Dr. Berg is called the gallbladder formula. And I started taking that with my meal. And I was finally able to get off of this, the HCl, and I was only taking the gallbladder formula. And I was feeling okay. But then there'd be, you know, the occasional, oh, I ate too much, or I ate something that probably had one of my allergens in it. We had determined, by the way, through the doctor, that I had a really bad soy allergy. Soy was my main allergen, and then corn. I had sensitivity to corn and wheat and dairy. I was kind of reacting to all of those things essentially, but soy was the biggest culprit for me. I thought initially I was allergic to eggs and chicken, But come to find out, if I ate eggs and chicken that were pastured, that weren't fed a soy mixed feed, I'd do fine with them, with both of them. So then one day I just decided I didn't want to take anything anymore except my multivitamin, you know, my liquid D and K, and just a couple of other supplements to help my body, zinc, you know, I take a few of those. But I weaned myself off of the gallbladder formula as well. And then, oh, but getting back to the HCl, you guys, I do think that this is a really good, viable option. At least it was for me for the time, but I just didn't want to have to keep taking this stuff. So I was still continuing to press on and really investigate and research and try to figure out what was going on. Why was my body not assimilating these things? Because not only was I not absorbing nutrients from my food, apparently, I wasn't able to assimilate a lot of supplements that were going into my body, meaning that my body didn't know what to do with them. It's like my body could not digest them, or assimilate's the only word I know to describe that, you know. And so I had to figure out how to fix my gut in hopes that my body would eventually come around and reboot and heal. I just wanted to be off of everything, you know, except a few supplements. And so I knew that's what I wanted, and I felt like that's what I needed, but I really didn't know how. I didn't know if that was possible or how it was possible. Then I stumbled onto something that I can only equate to what I call a miracle, or you know, by the grace of God. And I'm going to share that with you guys very soon. Something very simple, and it's something that might work for other people, it might not. With that said, I had decided to basically just change my life. After all, I was the only one who could. You know, I was the only one who could make these changes, but I knew that I had to be consistent. It wasn't about, you know, you can't eat one healthy meal and expect to turn around, just like, you know, somebody who eats really healthy, if they have one meal at McDonald's, they're not going to gain 50 pounds, right? Just like that, you know. Well, it's the same thing the other way around, and I knew that I had to do something that was consistent. So that's when I started to take action, and I was sitting there one day, I'm like, Bren, you have all this information, you know, you have this plethora of information, of course, still learning every day. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, I'm just somebody who has been basically forced to research, to try to figure out ways to improve my own health. And so I knew I was the only one who was going to be able to make those changes, and I took action. I began creating new recipes for myself. I wanted wholesome food. I wanted, you know, to be able to go to the farmer's market, grab a few things and create a meal. I wanted to find grass-fed and finished beef. I wanted to find chickens and you know, eggs that hadn't ingested soy. Soy was in everything. It's in so much stuff because it's a cheap filler. It is just a really cheap filler. I mean, you know, and it's just yeah, it's in everything because it's a cheap filler. That's the bottom line. There's no other explanation for it. That's what the farmers tell me. I did a lot of research. I talked with a lot of farmers who raise chickens. You know, I'm like, hey, is there any chance you could raise any chickens without soy? And, you know, most of them said that it's not economical for them, and that's why they don't do it, because soy is a cheap filler, and the feed that they buy has soy in it automatically, with the exception of a few, which I have found, but it took a while. Sun is getting bright, you guys. So the next step I started doing was eliminating soy from my diet, obviously, and then I also took sugar out too, because I thought, well, I don't want to just get healthy, I'd like to lose weight too, because I feel like that's part of it. As I put on weight, I developed sleep apnea, which, you know, of course affects your sleep, and it was a vicious cycle, really. As I started putting on weight, you know, my knees, my feet, everything was hurting, being winded. Or do anything without being winded, and I got sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. Bottom line, for now, I'm just doing something that's sustainable for me. I'll share that with you guys if you want to hear about what I'm eating and how I'm eating and different things that I'm doing. All I can say is that I feel like $1,000,000 most days. I have more energy than I've had in years, and haven't seen my doctor in Chicago in months. I will probably go back at some point here in the following, you know, probably before the end of the year maybe, and get another endoscopy and just see where my eosinophils are, where the count is. But I can tell you that, you know, I'm back to being able to take a lot of my supplements now, and I can eat all the foods that I'm eating with very little trouble. I still stop eating early in the day just because maybe I'm just paranoid. I also picked up a what do they call that, like a triangle pillow. I had picked that up during the time when the regurgitation was really bad. Gee guys, I have to put my sunglasses on. When the regurgitation was really bad, I had to get that pillow, and that was the only way I could rest. Even though it was hard on the back, I had to do that during those months. What it boils down to, you guys, is right now I'm doing whatever I can to give my body what it needs to heal from all of the torturous things I put it through, from other things it's just been through, you know, for whatever reason. That's what I'm doing. I'm giving my body what it needs in hopes that my body will turn around and say, hey, okay, we can, you know, we can handle this now. There's, you know, some of that load has been lifted, and I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but that's what I'm doing. Well, for Mother's Day or my mom's birthday, I can't remember which it was, we had gone out for a steak dinner. And so I had some steak and some broccoli and a salad, and I was really full, but you know, everybody was having dessert, and I thought, oh gosh, that looks so good, but I didn't want to cave in, so I broke out my my grapefruit. Now, granted, I was still having heartburn at this point, intermittently. I was still having heartburn, and especially if I overate or if I ate a big meal or a meaty meal like steak or something like that, that was more difficult to digest. And so I ate my grapefruit. Well, I didn't have any heartburn at all, even though I had overeaten and it was a heavy meal. I didn't have any heartburn that night at all. I thought, oh, that's interesting. The next time I had steak, I did not eat a grapefruit, and I had terrible heartburn. But the heartburn at this point was few and far in between at this point, just from from all of the other things too that I had weaned myself off of. I felt like my gut is finally starting to come around, but I was still having heartburn enough. You know, I was still having it enough. I was still trying to figure out how to get off of everything and taking Tums when I needed to. Long story short, what I do now is I eat a grapefruit after every single meal, because every time I do, or even a few pieces of grapefruit, it doesn't have to be a whole grapefruit. Every time I eat a grapefruit or some grapefruit after a meal, no matter what I've eaten, I don't get heartburn. Of course, my mom can't do that because she's on a blood thinner, and it can interfere with blood thinners as well as cholesterol medication and possibly a few others. So not everybody can eat grapefruit, but I can, and I do, and it has been life-changing for me. It is my little miracle, and I thank God for this. Nothing bad happens to me with this. Nothing. There's no negatives. There's no side effects. There's nothing, and it's just delicious to me. I eat it like an orange. I eat it after every meal, at least a couple pieces, and I'm telling you, my heartburn is gone. And I don't know how to explain it, but I'd had that grapefruit that day because after this big steak dinner, because everybody was having sweets and I wanted something, and this, you know, fit the bill in that moment. And just so happened that I didn't get heartburn, and I did some experimenting on myself and some testing, and the conclusion was this. I haven't taken a Tum since that day. I haven't, well, except for the times where I didn't eat one when I was kind of testing it out as like, this can't be real. It can't be that simple. It just can't. It can't be. But it is. For me, it is. I wish that this is something that could work for everybody. If you guys try it, you know, as long as you're not on any medications that it can interact with, but always check with your doctor if you can have grapefruit, because grapefruit does, it enhances the effects of certain medications, big time. So, but for me, it's been miraculous, and I'm just so grateful. I feel just incredibly like such a blessing. A piece of fruit has saved me, and I feel my body healing with each new week that, you know, I'm losing a little weight here and there, and things are going in the right direction, and I can feel it in my body. I feel it when I'm sleeping. You know, with each week or so, every 5 pounds or so, I feel like I'm sleeping a little bit better. You know, I'm not having the sleep apnea as much. My husband said he doesn't hear me snoring like I was, because I was having sleep apnea where I would stop breathing and snoring, and he said I really don't snore anymore, and that's just from, I think, what have I lost, about 24 pounds since I began. But see, this is something, what I'm doing, you guys, is something that I know I can sustain forever. And I'm not saying I'm not going to have McDonald's again, or I'm not going to have a caramel sundae or whatever some of my favorite treats are, but I'm going to have those things. I'm not going to deprive myself. But first I want to get all this weight off so that I can feel better and continue to allow my body to heal. Give it only what it needs. Give it only the things that my body recognizes, you know, real wholesome foods, as few supplements as possible. I think supplementation is amazing. I still do some supplementation, but because my body needs to heal, my theory, because my body needs to heal, I want to ingest as little as possible, unless it's something that I know is going to contribute to that. Don't get me wrong, like I said, I think supplements are fantastic. I have nothing against supplements at all. I just think, of course, I always buy supplements with as few excipients as possible, and that I would recommend, but you know, I don't like fillers. But with that said, I mean, I just want my body to heal, and I want to give it the rest that it needs, if that makes sense. You know, as little kind of foreign things to digest as possible. Let it rest and just eat the whole foods I'm eating. And I feel like it's kind of one thing at a time here, one thing at a time. And there's constantly changes I'm noticing where there's been improvement. And I'm so sorry about the sunglasses, you guys, but it's just so sunny. I absolutely have to wear these right at the moment. I'm noticing improvements pretty much every week or so, or every couple weeks. Something else has changed. I'm like, oh gosh, hey, you know, this is gone, or this feels better. Or kind of like with this, like, oh my gosh, I ate a grape, you know, if I don't have a grapefruit, then I get heartburn. It is a fact. It is a fact. I have based it on testing on myself. It's a fact for me. So I do eat a grapefruit every day. Usually end up eating a whole one because, like I said, I eat at least a couple pieces, like 2 slices after every meal. This is not a diet for me. I wanted, you know, when I decided, okay, what am I going to do? What kind of recipes do I want to make? What do I want to be eating? Because I don't want to be, you know, it's like, do I do keto? Do I do low carb, high fat? Do I do vegan, vegetarian? I did raw food for a while. This was probably about 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. I was raw food for about 5 months. I ate a lot of fruit and vegetables, and I felt great initially, but then of course my iron was severely low, and so that's a whole other story, but that was just me. But I've done the gamut with so-called diets. I've done it all. And you know, I always say when I was growing up, I was an accidental vegetarian because I hated meat. I couldn't stand the texture. I couldn't stand the sight of it, the smell of it. It made me sick. But that's a whole other story too. But I didn't eat much meat growing up. I do now, but I'm still not, you know, I don't eat a lot of meat, but I do eat some. So we'll get into all the food stuff another time. If you guys are interested, let me know in the comments section. I'm happy to share that with you guys, but only if you're interested. I don't want to bombard you guys with all this stuff either because, you know, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I thought I would share with you guys since we're on this journey together. I wanted you guys to know what I've been doing and why I've been doing it, and what prompted me with the urgency. My EoE is, I feel like it's under control. I feel like I really rarely even remember it's there anymore, and to me that's a huge statement or huge testament that diet can really change everything. You know, changing the way that you eat can change your life. Really, you know, the old saying was, you know, you are what you eat, and I think I was a ticking time bomb because I was just a junk food junkie, and I loved sugar. I loved sugar so much, you guys. I couldn't go a day. After every meal I had to have some sort of a dessert. My mom's famous chocolate cake, which I have to bring to every single family event, you know, especially for my in-laws. It's amazing. It's from scratch, and I'll still indulge in that once in a while. If you guys want to see that recipe, let me know. It's amazing. It's amazing. But sugar, basically, in a nutshell, destroys your collagen. It's terrible for your skin. It doesn't just cause breakouts, it causes your skin to just break down, and you know, this stuff, and jowls, and it's bad. You know, sugar contributes to all of that, and I just stopped. No, just natural sugars for me now. I do not limit myself. I don't count calories, nothing like that, you guys. I drink a lot of water. I mean, I feel like my diet's really boring, but I have had to be a little bit creative trying to find stuff without soy, without anything, you know. So thank God it's summer. We have the farmer's market. This video's already gotten really long. One quick thing I want to add to you guys is I finally had my husband take like a full body picture for my before pictures, even though I'd already lost about, 24 pounds now at this point. Wish I would have remembered to do that before, but I just you know, one day I just started, and that was before I started sharing it on YouTube or with you guys or anything, and just didn't think of it. Better late than never, right, you guys? So I had him do that yesterday, and it was hard. It was hard to see those pictures, you guys. I was just like, I don't even look at myself in the mirror much anymore. hardly any of my clothes fit. Of course, they're starting to fit now. I'm able to actually wear a few more things now, but I mean, it's just hard. I shrug the camera most of the time, except here on YouTube, but that's easy for me because you know, here up, that's been easy, you know. But, you know, even editing my videos can be really difficult for me. It's very cringy sometimes, but I'm learning to just kind of try to love myself and find the good things, you know, instead of just looking at the world with rose-colored glasses. I'm trying to look at myself with through rose-colored glasses as well. And I love that saying. And, you know, the world is hard. You know, people can be really harsh and really cruel. And so I feel like, you know, why do that to ourselves on top of it? Why, you know, I don't like drama. I don't like all of that. I just, you know, life can be hard. Let's keep things really calm and beautiful, and let's be good to each other and support each other. And my mom always used to tell me, she used to say, Bren, you need to learn how to control your facial expressions. I can't. If it's in here, if I'm feeling something, you're going to see it here. That is just the bottom line, you guys. That's the bottom line. Just some real talk today, my friends. I'll share those pictures with you guys soon. I'm scared. Oh, I want to take my glasses off, but I just can't. I'll probably share a full body picture with you guys every month, because you probably wouldn't see, you know, it doesn't pay every week. You're not going to probably see much change there, but I'm excited. I'm really motivated and very disciplined. And not saying that there aren't hard times, but I'm feeling so good for the first time in years. You know, I feel like I've gone through the last, I don't know, like 15 years of my life in a fog. Anybody else feel that way? That's how I feel. I feel like I just walked through it like a dream, and I'm finally feeling like I'm living again, and I'm loving it, and there's not anything that's worth going back for me. And so I'm just gonna go full steam ahead. I'm really happy that you guys are on this journey with me. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Hope it wasn't too boring for you guys, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Hope I didn't overstep my boundaries at all. Like I said, I'm just sharing with you guys my story. This is my story. I'm not saying that, you know, things are going to work for anybody else, or something that didn't work for me isn't going to work for you. You know, everybody's different. Our bodies are different. Our chemistry is different. These are things that have worked for me. These are changes I'm making. You know, it took me 48 years to be ready, to have my headspace ready to do this, and to have the knowledge. And, you know, I got so tired of feeling so badly, just in every way, just so tired. There's a plane going overhead. But I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to spend this time with me. I really do. Thanks so much, you guys. And if you did like this video, I'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. I will see you guys in the next one. Hopefully my coffee video will be up for you guys next week. I'll see you soon, guys. Have a beautiful day. Bye.
There's my factory model here, second eye.
Mm-hmm.
We had that NG treatment for a very long time. Remember?
Yep. Just drew it real well, and
Did your dad have one?
I'm not sure.